Our founding fathers could have never understood the true soulful purpose of their internal words written by mortal hands onto parchment paper that cemented the foundation of this great nation. And we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it is these words, life and liberty, that the story of African Americans are told. A poem by Langston Hughes reads, "I too sing America. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow I'll be at the table when company comes, and nobody'll dare say to me then, eat in the kitchen. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed." African Americans started off in the coast of West Africa. And it's important to understand that the slave trade existed long before Dutch and Portuguese and Spanish and English ships landed on the west coast of Africa. And when they did, they bartered and they traded goods with the local tribesmen there to go into Central Africa and grab more people to be sold off into slavery. And this time and during this period, they called it the Atlantic slave trade. And this Atlantic slave trade lasted for more than 300 years and transported more than 11 million people into the Americas. And it was coined the Atlantic slave trade by the salesmen, the shipmen who sailed that route during that time. And so there was a process called seasoning, where after those slaves were put on those slavers, the ships that took them into the Caribbean, the Africans would be stripped of their culture. They would be stripped of their name. They would be stripped of their pride in this process called seasoning. And it wasn't until 1720 that those slaves that used to go directly into the Caribbean to be seasoned before being brought to America started coming straight away into this country. And so during that Atlantic slave trade, that triangle left the west coast of Africa and went into the Caribbean. And they sold those slaves and they took on sugar and other spices. Then they brought those up into America. And they received other cash crops like tobacco. And then they sell that back to England. And that was the route that they took for 300 years. And so the story of African Americans began in this great nation. During the Revolutionary War, slaves were signed up to fight for independence of America. And at the end of that war, after independence was won, those slaves were sent back to their masters. During the War of 1812, Andrew Jackson rode across the South and promised freedom to any slave who signed up to help them fight. And after they had won that war, they were returned back to their masters. And this process happened over and over again. And then there was transition. There was an underground railroad, and one of the most famous conductors was Harriet Tubman. And it's important to understand that she couldn't have done this alone. It took tons of white abolitionists who wanted to free those African Americans from the brutality and the hardships of slavery to make it work. And so they sang songs in the fields as they picked cotton, old Negro spirituals. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's going to trouble the water sent a message that when it was time to escape, make sure that you crossed into the water to throw the dogs off of your scent and off of your trail. When they sang songs about Jordan and the Promised Land, those were code words for the North and for Canada. And so it took a lot of people coming together to make that underground railroad work. And then things progressed, and we found ourselves in the Civil War. And a lot of African Americans signed up to fight on their own for their own freedom. And after their freedom was won, they stayed and they joined and they were a part of the 10th Cavalry, and they pushed west and fought in the Indian Wars, even though they didn't receive the same pay and rights and benefits as their white counterparts. The struggle continued. And after the Civil War, we received our emancipation, and they amended the Constitution with the 14th and 15th Amendments. And during that time, the South instituted Jim Crow laws. And I'm reminded of a song by Billie Holiday. Southern trees bear a strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the roots. Black bodies sway in a southern breeze. This strange fruit hanging from the poplar tree. And it was through these struggles in the South where there was no habeas corpus found for African Americans. I, a black man in the South, could be beaten, lynched, hung, and put on fire for simply looking at a white woman. Court systems were unfair. Everything was separate and unequal. And so we had the fight for civil rights. We had people sit at counters. We had people boycott buses and march all over this great nation. And it wasn't just black people alone. White people showed up. Mexican people showed up. Asian people showed up to show solidarity and civil rights. And so the personal relevance and how all this applies to me today, I'm reminded of the poem by Maya Angelou, Still I Rise. You can shoot me with your words. You can cut me with your eyes. You can kill me with your hatred. But like air, still I rise. And so everywhere I step is hallowed ground. Not because of something that I've done or my great contributions to the world, but because I stand on the shoulders of all the people who have come before me, who have sacrificed that enables me to be here today. I had the opportunity to attend the Senior NCO Academy, and I, a black male from the South Side of Chicago, stood at the Senior NCO Academy, one of the most prestigious institute of military learning in Montgomery, Alabama, and gave a speech. I too sing America. If you saw me and you asked me, hey, how are you doing and what's going on, I would tell you that I'm living the dream. And if anyone ever stopped to ask me what that dream is, I would dig into my cargo pocket and I would place up my soapbox and I would stand on it and I would reiterate the words of Martin Luther King. Because today I am judged by my character and not by the color of my skin. Today I can sit in a conference room with white men and black men and Asian men and Latino men and talk about the future and the state of our Air Force. I am living the dream. And all because of the sacrifices of the people who came before me. I too sing America. I stand on the shoulders of Frederick Douglass. I stand on the shoulders of Elizabeth Stratton. I stand on the shoulders of Nathaniel and Annie Mae Booth, my grandparents, who left southern Mississippi for Chicago for the hope of a brighter future for me. With less than a 6th grade education, and now I have a bachelor's degree, I too sing America. And while the U.S. Constitution, when it was written and signed, did not include me, those words, the power and the soulful purpose of them are timeless. So timeless that now it includes me. Now I can go wherever I want. Now there is no limit to my potential. I too sing America. I am America.